Today we're gonna discuss all the tricks you can make using the blending option. Hey there, my name is Ali and today we're going through the blending options. Okay, first, where do we find the blending options? The blending option can be accessed if you press double click on the layer thumbnail, it will open it, or if you double click on the layer itself, it will open it. However, if you double click on the letters, it will go to rename, which won't work. Okay, we said double clicking the thumbnail works. However, if it's a text layer and you double click on the thumbnail, it won't work. If it's a smart object and you double click on the thumbnail, it also won't work. So always get used to double clicking on the layer itself or pressing right click. It's going slow. Okay, pressing right click and going for blending options, it's the first one on the top, or even if you press right click on the icon on any of them, you will find the blending option, the top one. Okay, let's start with the blending options. The first thing in the blending options is the opacity. The opacity basically makes everything transparent. Same for the fill. I'll tell you the difference just in a second between opacity and fill. They are both can be found here. I decrease it like that. You don't have like to open it and decrease, just pull it to the left or pull it to the right. Same for the fill, left and right. Then we have something called blending options. We will, the blending, I don't remember what it's called, but this one we'll go through it in another like tutorial. Okay, the blending options. Yeah, that's the blending mode, not the options. Okay, here you have it the same, so we will ignore that. And here you have just like RGB, choosing the colors and everything. This one is not important, the first one, which is the blending options. However, the blend if is very important, but we're gonna go through it in the color grading tutorial. Okay, let's start with the first one. It's bevel emboss. Make sure when you click you don't only tick it, because that won't do anything. Like it will do it, but it won't show you the options. So when you click on the letters themselves, it will open the bevel emboss menu. Okay, let me now zoom in. Once you press OK, you will get it like in an effect. You can double click it so you can change it. Okay, the bevel emboss, what it does is that it adds two colors, one on a side and the other on another side. Usually it's made white on screen mode and black on multiply mode. Let's make sure they are both 50%. And like the contour, make sure it's like that one. It's a linear one. And like just don't play around with these stuff. If you increase the depth, nothing will happen because the size is 0. However, if you start increasing the size, you see what happens? It adds white from top and it adds black from below, because here the angle is 90 degrees. If I make the angle somewhere like here, you'll see on the top left, it will add white. On the down right, it will add black. This is the bevel and emboss menu. You can switch it up like black top left and white top down without like changing the angle. You can play around with the depth, like make it like stronger or make it like bigger or smaller. And finally, you can soften it or leave it hard, like soft and hard. Okay, that's all you need for now. The other one is something called the stroke. So the stroke, basically what it does, if you leave it on 0, it adds a line. I need to zoom in actually. Yeah, I'll just press Alt and click and move to the left. Okay, now you see what the stroke did. It added a line, a black line all around my layer. You can choose the size of the stroke. This is 1 pixel. If I increase it so much, it will just cover everything. Let's actually try the stroke on that one, on the blue layer. Here we go, let's add the stroke. Okay, now we have the stroke. You see it's on the blue layer. Let me just zoom out a little bit. Zoom in, zoom out here. Let's move that to the side, something like that. Okay, here we can see the stroke. If you increase it, it will increase. You can have 3 positions, whether it's the stroke is an external one. Here is like how the layer is gonna look like. It's like a preview. And here is inside, it's the strokes totally inside. And the last one is center. It will add half of the stroke in the middle and like inside, half of the stroke outside. And you can choose like whether you want it color or you want it as a gradient or a pattern. And you can change the color of the stroke, whatever you want. Okay, remember the fill and opacity? Okay, let's close this one now. This is our layer now. If I reduce the opacity, it will remove the blue along with the stroke. However, if I move the fill, it will only remove what's filled inside. It will leave the blending options we added. Okay, let's do zoom out. Now after like the stroke, we have the inner shadow. Okay, I'm gonna explain on this one, on this layer. We have two options, one of them called drop shadow, one of them called inner shadow. I'll start with the drop shadow, the last one down. What the drop shadow does, it allows you to choose an angle, make sure it's just black and multiply. It allows you to choose angle and make sure everything is 0. Okay, let's choose an angle first. I'll go for 135. So this is where the light is coming from. So if I increase the distance, you see what's gonna happen? It's gonna throw shadow. However, the distance does that, but if I increase the size, you see what happens? It fades it out and add like shadow around the whole thing, not in a specific angle. So what can I do with this? For example, I want this to drop like shadow on my wall. I want to make it like as if it's a little bit having depth. So I'll just increase the distance a little bit. And then I'll just increase the size a little bit to fade it. If I believe this is too strong, I'll just reduce the opacity of the shadow. Okay, now we have like an outer shadow of the thing. Make sure you don't play around with the noise. It will just, I don't find any possible use for this one actually. Like who would want something like that? I don't know. Okay, that's the drop shadow. The inner shadow is almost the same. However, the difference is, let's make it all 0. We also choose the same angle. But the difference in this one is that it adds shadow inside, not outside. It doesn't drop shadow, it adds shadow to the inside. So if I do something like that and give a little bit of size to feather it out and just reduce the opacity, you see what it did? I'll close it and open it. It just added a shadow, internal shadow on my thing. Let's say I don't want it from an angle, I want it from the 4 sides equal. I'll just make the distance 0. And now I'll just increase the size. It will add shadow to the whole thing from the 4 sides. You see? Okay, the choke will make it like very sharp or very soft. You don't need to use it. Just leave it as it is. Okay, now we're done with the inner shadow. We're done with the drop shadow. Okay, let's go to this one. Now I have a layer. I don't care what's like drawn on this layer, because what I'm gonna do is something called pattern overlay. This one. The pattern overlay, what it does is that it adds a pattern from the Photoshop to whatever pixels you have. Whether they're gray, green, whatever color you have, it will just add pixel. Here, you will have the pattern like, some of them will be Photoshop, some of them you can add them by like going to this and pressing on load patterns. So let's say for example, I choose this style patterns. Make sure it's on normal and it's on 100% opacity. Okay, now we have something called the scale. Now if this is like too big for me, I can like make it either bigger if I want, or just reduce the scale to make it smaller if I want. This is really useful for like architects actually. Okay, let's go to that layer now. I'll go right click, blending options. Then there is something called the color overlay. What the color overlay does, it actually just overlays color on your layer and you choose which color you want. It will completely overlay it with it. I only use this if I want to make like a shadow. If I want this, I'll press Ctrl T now and just do it like that, as if it was like a shadow for me, for example. But there are like easier ways to do it by pressing Ctrl click and just coloring with black. It's another way to do it, so you don't have to use the color overlay. I don't find it useful at all actually, the color overlay. Okay, let's go to the last two I'm gonna discuss. Okay, here I'm gonna go to blending options. One of them is called the inner glow and the other is the outer glow. Okay, let me zoom in. Like that, let's see. Okay, let's start with the outer glow. Just make sure everything is like 0, 0, 0, everything is 0. Okay, first one is the opacity. It's always gonna be like on white and on screen mode. Just leave it as it is. Okay, the technique you can use softer or precise. The softer will be better because like you're adding light, you want it to be soft. However, the first thing is spread. You don't want to play around with spread, just leave it as it is. Play around with the size. What the size will do is it will just does an outer glow around your photo. But the problem is this is too hard. So we have here something called the range. If you increase it to the maximum, it will make it soft. If you decrease it, it will make it like hard. And the jitter, you don't need to use it at all, completely useless. Just increase the range and you can increase the size. Like now we have some sort of like a light around it. Let's close it and open it. You see, we have some sort of an external light around the moon. Okay, let's go to the other one, which is the inner glow. The inner glow, what it does, let's bring everything back to 0. Okay, the inner glow is exactly the same, but the difference is it adds the light inside, not outside. You see, it's inside, not outside. You can also increase the range, size, so it's like faded. You see the before and after. You just have some sort of light faded. And you can change it to center. Let me bring that so we can see. You see if it's center or edge. So you can do it from the edges to the inside or from the center of your photo to the outside. And you can like increase the range, and if it's too strong you can just like reduce the opacity or increase it. Okay, I guess that's it for the blending options. In the next tutorial I'm gonna explain the blending modes. And if you haven't watched, like we explained all the tools in the tutorials before, if you haven't watched it, make sure you watch it so you're like following along with us. If you have any comments, make sure you also leave them down below. Thank you guys.